Great. Why don't we get started? Hello, everybody. My name is Josh Sharfstein. I'm the Vice Dean for Public Health Practice and Community Engagement here at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And I am delighted to welcome you to this very interesting discussion called Together We Can End Recidivism. And this is part of a series of webinars that have happened. This is the last one, actually, that is a collaboration between the Center for Public Health and Human Rights and an organization called From Prison to PhDs, From Prison Cells to PhDs, P2P. And the other webinars in the series have included education over incarceration, dignity for incarcerated women, and centering the voices of formerly and currently incarcerated people. And so each of these webinars, which you can see on the YouTube channel for the Center for Public Health and Human Rights at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, explores topics that are often ignored, which is beyond just thinking about big picture incarceration, big picture of criminal justice system and reform. Who are the people who are affected, and what really matters to them, and how can those insights actually drive much better policy? And that's definitely the topic for today. And you will get to meet some just fantastic people and hear from them during the course of the day, and the chance, the session, and the chance to ask some questions yourself. So the plan today is to talk about this topic, Together We Can End Recidivism, with a particular focus on communication. Communication to people who are incarcerated, communication after people leave incarceration, and just really getting into the details of what being in detention and incarcerated means, and how things can be done differently so that when people leave, they can regain control of their lives and find a path that allows them to thrive. And that process can actually begin while they're still incarcerated and then continue afterwards. And we'll hear just so many interesting perspectives and details about that today. We're going to have a keynote speaker who is Marcus Bullock, the CEO of a company called Flikshop, and he'll explain all about what that company does. And after he is done, we'll have some brief comments and some Q&A with Kim Haven, who is the policy director of From Prison Cells to PhD, P2P, as well as Basha Skudrick, the placement coordinator from in the organization From Prison Cells to PhDs, P2P. And then we will have some brief comments from Dr. Stanley Andrees, who is the executive director of From Prison Cells to PhD, followed by questions. So I know everyone's really eager to jump in, as am I. I have had an incredible opportunity to meet the panelists beforehand, and I'm really excited for this discussion. And with that, I'll turn it over to Marcus Bullock. Marcus?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for that awesome introduction. I'm super excited to be able to be here. To all of you amazing students and faculty that are spread throughout the Johns Hopkins campus and online throughout the country. And definitely shout out to all of the leaders whom I'm grateful to stand on the shoulders of as I work to contribute to the success path of other returning citizens like me. I am super pumped to be here and to share space with you all this afternoon, especially as we build a conversation around strategies to end recidivism. Because I enjoy these types of conversations so much, I'm going to apologize early for my extreme excitement to be here. Our mission at Flikshop is always rooted in love and empathy, and I feel so honored that so many of you are spending your afternoon with me here today. This moment is really special for me. It's special for all of my friends who are still sitting in those cells, aspiring to be a part of these conversations one day. And even my mom, who always wanted to have some association with a major college or university someday, simply to share a success with the world that most would publicly recognize. You see, I've learned over the years of being an entrepreneur that most folks who never would have linked my current role in the community as a CEO with my blemished path that actually helped build who I am today. And I'm grateful, like, I don't know what, to be able to help build some of those bridges. In fact, this is the narrative for most of the 70 million people around the country that walk around with a felony conviction stapled to their past. One of the reasons this series of webinars is so important, at least to me, is not to simply help shift the narrative, but to also help bring so many of you all to closer proximity to the amazing, the women who are building safe housing around cities like New York for formerly incarcerated mothers, or the professors who are educating the next wave of leaders at our HBCUs. These stories are designed to change the dinner table conversations, which I pray will help create empathy, which eventually moves policy. When we leave here today, it's my hope that our community will band together to move the needle even further toward justice in this era of policy and reentry reform. And I want to hear from you guys. So definitely please join in the conversation, jump in the chat, take your time. You all on your phones anyway, so definitely tweet. Make sure you add me. I'm at _Marcus_Bullock. Post on your IG stories and ask the questions that we can actually answer here today. And just to make it a little interesting, I won't even spend time with stats or infographics. I simply want to tell you a story. And that way we don't have to be bored with it. See, a few weeks after my 15th birthday, when I was 15 and my best friend was 16, we decided to make the brilliant decision, one of the worst decisions of my life, to be able to go to a shopping mall in Fairfax County, Virginia, and carjack a man. We tapped on his window with a firearm, demanded that he get out of the car. We jumped in the driver's seat and the passenger side of the car and sped off down 95 toward our homes, back toward the Washington Metropolitan, back toward the Prince George's County area. We left that man standing in that parking lot. And the very next day, both the 15-year-old Marcus and the 16-year-old Dwayne were arrested, and we were sitting inside of a jail cell. And it was interesting as we continue to grow down this new path of learning new vocabulary words like arraignment and consecutive sentences and concurrent sentences, while I just came out of my 10th grade classrooms as a sophomore at Suitland Senior High School. It was interesting during that time because while I had never prepared myself for this new life that I was going to be living once I would face a judge and have my mom and my sister sitting just a few feet behind me as they listened to that judge sentence me to 8 years in adult maximum security prisons. This moment would change my life and my family's life forever. That 8-year sentence that they gave me as a 15-year-old kid for stealing that man's car didn't even register in my brain at the moment, at the time, because I was so focused on what was happening during my sophomore year. In fact, my earth science class was like one of my favorite classes. And while I was determined to make it to that class on time, I also wanted to ensure that I was able to preserve my starting role as a shooting guard on our basketball team while we were preparing to play against Sherwood in the state finals. This was my new life. And my girlfriend at the time, who had just promised to buy me a brand new Kenneth Cole t-shirt that I was going to wear after we came back from Christmas break, couldn't understand why my mother had explained to my girlfriend in high school that she probably wouldn't see me for a few more months. That time that I lived inside of that denial and that delirium continued to progress day after day, even as I grew and I that sentence and got shipped down the road to a maximum security facility that were filled with men, with my best friend, who was my cell partner, that had life plus 43 years. I still lived in that delirium thinking that, hey, you know, these guys are locked up, but clearly not me, not Marcus, right? Like, eventually someone will figure that they made a mistake. Eventually someone will figure out that, you know, there's no way that a 15-year-old or 16-year-old who was focused on trying to figure out how to be able to get back to homecoming or even prom or senior trip could spend this much time inside of a prison cell. In fact, it wasn't until one day when I was walking around a prison rec yard when I was 2 years into that prison sentence as a 17-year-old, and I was walking around with my best friend, Danny B, who was in his mid 50s, because prison is one of the only places where you can be 17-year-old and have a 50-year-old best friend. And I looked at Danny B and I asked him how long he had been there. Danny B looked down at me. He was like, Marcus, man, I've been here for 31 years. And that moment shook me to my core. It smacked me like a ton of bricks, and my palms got sweaty, my heart dropped to my toes, and I realized, holy crap, if they would keep Danny Brown here for 31 years, they would surely keep me here for 8. I immediately got depressed, and I thought that my life was going to be over from that point forward. I couldn't show my fear, or I couldn't emote while I walked around that prison rec yard track, but I promise you that night and almost every night thereafter, I wanted to cry silent tears, hoping and praying that the slamming, cold, clanking doors, listening to them every night would begin to stop, but I knew that they wouldn't. You see, my best friend who was sitting in that cell with me would constantly complain about the possibility of him dying looking at cinder block walls. And I thought that not only would that possibly be his fate, but it would be mine too. I began to talk different, and my attitude became different. I was no longer the happy-go-lucky teenager who believed that there was a glimmer of hope that was shining in front of him, but I became the depressed person who all I wanted to do was fight. There was anger, there was depression. There were nights filled with solitary confinement because these prison officials had no idea and no desire to want to help understand the reasons why I was so angry in the moment, but to make sure that I felt the punishment of any kind of reaction after someone told me to move and I didn't want to. My mom began to sense this same kind of resentment and fear and hatred and anger, and she just wanted to cut it off at the head, as she would constantly accept my expensive collect calls or write me letters in hopes and prayers that she would be able to cheer me up. In fact, when I began to push her away and say, Mom, don't even visit him anymore. Start grieving now. You need to figure out a way to get over me, because the reality of it is that I'm probably going to die in these prison cells. My mom, she lived on the other side of that phone and said, okay, I have something for this. She just made a decision that very next weekend to drive to come and visit me 4 hours away at Brunswick Correctional Center, where she sat in that visiting room and known that I had 6 years left to do on my prison sentence, and made a promise to me while she sat at that table. She looked at me in my eyes and told me how much she hated this new Marcus I was becoming, and said, Marcus, I want you to know that there's going to be life after prison. You need to know that there's something else on the other side of this, and I want to help make sure that you understand this exact reality. So she made a promise to me in that prison visiting room to write me a letter or send me a picture every day for the next 6 years of my prison sentence. Now I'm sitting in this prison visiting room, and I'm listening to my mom walking in here, prancing in like I'm in summer camp or something, talking about she about to send me a bunch of pictures and write me a bunch of letters. And I'm thinking in my head that there's no way that she must understand what happens when I go back behind those double doors. The process begins of me squatting and coughing just to have another person dehumanizing me, because they think that my mom may have brought some drugs into this prison, and she's thinking that her letters and her photos are going to change my life. The city of Richmond, Virginia was beefing with Washington, D.C., and they wanted to ensure that because they knew that I was from D.C., that I was going to be a big part of this beef, and that I would have to potentially walk around a prison rec yard with a lawnmower blade taped to the side of my thigh. And she's thinking that these photos and these letters are going to change my life. I couldn't believe the audacity of her, but my mom kept good on that promise. Every day after that, my mom would send me a photo of the most randomest things. My mom was literally like Instagram before Instagram was Instagram. She would send me pictures of things like a cheeseburger or a slice of pizza or a mattress at a department store, with the promise that one day I would enjoy a fat, juicy burger, or some stringy stuffed crust, or even a pillow top mattress when I came home. She would write me these long drawn out letters, and I would write her back. And just because I just wanted to be able to feel needed and loved, she would fill that void for me. I never realized what she was actually doing. And in fact, my best friends, who I eventually became my brothers while I was living in those cells, also began to live vicariously through my mom's letters and photos. My mom would she would commonly walk into the visiting room, and people would greet her as soon as she walked in. Some of my best friends from the rec yard, they yell, "Hey, Miss Bullock, how you doing? Did you ever get your washing machine and dryer fixed?" And my mom looking at them like, "How in the world they know about my washing machine and dryer?" And I'm like, "Mom, you send me pictures of the washing machine, the dryer, you saying it." One guy said he worked at Maytag, another guy argued he worked at Kenmore. It was a thing, just go with it. She's like, "Okay, hey, how you doing?" And it was interesting the kind of kindred spirit that we built simply from the new content that my mom was sending to me while I was growing up in a prison cell, spending my 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd birthdays growing up in some of the state's worst prisons. My mom wanted to ensure that I saw this new world that was sitting ahead of me. And in 2004, when I was finally released, and she was there to stand at those double doors, sitting there waiting to come and pick me up, I can tell you that this was the most proud day that she had of me in her life. In fact, I had been in prison for the last 8 years up until that moment, and I couldn't even explain where I have been the almost last decade of my life. But the last grade I completed was the 6th grade, and yet we still cried there boohoo tears as she told me that she was proud of me and that she still continued to love me, despite the decision that I made when I was a 15-year-old kid. There's something about a mother's love that you can't describe, even when you're going through the harshest times of your life. But one of the things that I realized is that it was my mom's love and empathy that allowed me to be able to keep going on and instill hope during one of the times when I thought that all was lost. It would happen that many months later, while trying to find a job on the career path of trying to navigate this new reentry process, that my mom would still be there to tell me that she was proud of me and all she wanted me to do was succeed. And so the fact that I was willing to take a minimum wage job at a paint store after filling out a job application and getting denied because I had to check that box that said I had a felony conviction on my record, my mom would still sit there and tell me that, "Marcus, one day it's going to happen." It was that one job at that paint store where I was mixing paint, where customers would come into the paint store and they would ask me, "Marcus, how much do you charge to come and paint my kitchen?" And I'm sitting there mixing paint like, "Ms. Johnson, this apron and this name tag says that I'm going to mix this whistling sky blue for you and you're going to paint your own kitchen." The painters would stand inside of the line at the paint store as well, and they would consistently complain about the new work that was completely fleeting as a result of this new market that was happening, this new recession that was pending. It was the mid 2000s, and I didn't understand what they were talking about because there were the Miss Johnsons of the world that would constantly come in and request for me to come and paint their kitchens. A light bulb went off, and I realized sitting behind that counter at a paint store while mixing paint that I had the opportunity that was unlike most people that wanted to run these kinds of paint businesses. I had direct deal flow from these customers who would come into the paint store, and I would be the conduit that would connect the painters directly back to them. It allowed us to be able to create perspectives painting contractors that would eventually go on to be able to win and bid on other projects that would completely change my life and the trajectory of our business. We would gain clients like McDonald's and then the National Press Club and then the Baltimore Washington International Airport, along with Howard University and Georgetown University, that allowed me to go from the job seeker just a few years prior to now the job giver, where we were able to give over 18 jobs to people that were from the community, with the first 16 of them also having a felony conviction just like mine. It was an incredible opportunity for me because not only was my mom finally able to see the fruits of her labor, of all of the commitment that she was making simply to share her love and empathy with me, that allowed me to be able to go on and build this company, this painting business that would turn into a construction company that even my friends that were back in prison would become proud of. You see, those men and women, they would constantly call me and they would write me and they'd be like, "Marcus, bro, I can't believe that you running this. You out there living your best life out there, bro. I can't believe this amazing life that you're living." And they wanted me to share those moments with them the same way that my mom did with me when I was sitting in those cells. They would constantly ask me if I would be willing to write them letters and send them pictures because they knew that I knew the importance of mail in keeping you connected inside of these prisons. You see, there are over 2.3 million people sitting in these cells in the US and 11 million globally, and they don't have access to the internet. That means there's no access to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or easy emailing or texting or any of the services that we have today. And so as I reflect back on the commitment that my mom made for me back in those interesting days when I sat in those cells, I knew that I had to be able to leverage this opportunity and a second chance that I had to be able to help impact some of the same families that will come behind me. We set out to try to figure out how to be able to solve for this problem because I would tell my friends, bro, I wish I could share this moment with you. I'm getting ready to get married. I want you to see photos of this. I can't believe I'm having my first child. I want you to share photos of this. I'm getting ready to purchase my first home, and I can't believe that I now have equity inside of something in the world, and I want to share this moment with you. The reality of it is that Monday turns into Tuesday too fast, and Tuesday turns into 3 weeks, and I don't even know how to print photos from my phone, and definitely didn't have the bandwidth to be able to sit down and write letters because my new life was filled with RFPs and ITBs and RFQs and architectural plans. This was the new life that I was living, and I would tell my friends, if I could just text you, bro, my life would be so much easier. I would share every bubble with you. I share all this stuff on Facebook and Instagram. And if you were able to follow me without catching the isolation charge for having a stolen cell phone in your cell, you would see all of these moments. And so I wanted to solve for this problem, but didn't know how. So while sitting in the office at the construction company one day, I Googled how to build a mobile app. Eventually, we will land on Flikshop, where we were able to create the first tech company that was able to deliver a mobile application that allowed for our users the ability to be able to take a picture, add some quick text, press send, and for 99 cents, we will print this picture and text on a real tangible postcard and ship it to any person in any cell anywhere in the country. These amazing postcards have been flown into facilities around the country, and we've connected over 170,000 families around the country, shipping our postcards into over 3,000 facilities, which is amazingly impactful for all of us at Flikshop offices today. And I'm really proud of what our families represent. I'm proud of each one of them that are acting in the same love that my mother had for me while I sat in prison. And there are hundreds of thousands of Marcuses sitting in prison and jails cells right now, just waiting to receive these small glimmers of hope in the mail. And I can't believe that I'm the founder and CEO of the company that's delivering this love. I can't wait to see what the next generation of returning citizens come home to build and create in my neighborhood, in yours. But I'm really proud of what it is that we built here at Flikshop. Since I've launched at Flikshop, I've been blessed to hire my amazing mom as our relationship manager. So, yep, she's still the boss of me, which is kind of sort of irritating sometimes. But we've also built the Flikshop School of Business, where we've mentored other returning citizens as they journey down the road of entrepreneurship. And we've even launched Flikshop Angels that allows for our community the ability to purchase Flikshop credits that we give to children with incarcerated parents so that they can send as many pics as they want to their incarcerated moms and dads completely for free. Flikshop Angels gave our community an opportunity to help reconnect their own homes and their own hearts to the humanity of family and childhood. This is just one way in the digital age that we can participate in racial injustice healing, but all of our communities are filled with opportunities to be able to be of service. We're all capable of creating the change that knocks down these racial lines, and we can all participate in giving our communities the space to build the next wave of tech companies or marketing agencies, or maybe even find a way to sit in a Johns Hopkins classrooms with that goal of making the dean's list. And while I know that we live in a divisive country, I also believe that we can contribute to our mission of building a more equitable and inclusive community, campus, city of Baltimore, and I challenge all of us to do the work. And just to be clear about what the work is, I challenge our schools and our businesses to completely remove the question that asks if I've been convicted of a felony from your admissions or job application. I challenge you to help lobby and create pathways for employment for people that come from less privileged families. I even challenge you to change the family conversations in your own homes because I believe that this is how you drive policy decisions and contribute to the narratives that point toward the brilliance of people like me that don't want to live in the shadows or be judged by the worst decision of their lives. This is your time, and it begins right now where you are today, just as it did for me that moment that they popped those gates. I'm so grateful to have shared just a short bit of my journey with the hope to create empathy, show the power of love and resilience, and to challenge our beliefs and our biases. Thank you guys so much for committing yourselves to creating such a dope community that my two children will be proud of. I'm so grateful to be here, and I can't wait to see how you guys are being intentional about reshaping the lives of people who come from communities like mine. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was just amazing. Thank you so much, Marcus, for your comments. And you know what is just so amazing to me about it is you're talking about, on the one hand, a technological innovation, but fundamentally the power of something that's not about technology at all. It's about a human connection and how you made that happen, how it worked for you, and what you're now able to do for thousands and thousands of people. Thank you so much for sharing that inspirational story. We're now going to go to some reactions, and we'll start with Kim Haven. Kim, maybe just give a little bit more of your introduction for people who are listening, and tell us your reflections on the idea of communication as a way to reduce recidivism.
Well, I think communication is key. And I think part of that is because we need to change the narrative. We also need to send positive messages, as Marcus was saying, about hope, about the fact that, you know, we are all better than our worst day. And so to not be forgotten. I have participated in so many different groups and support groups, and communication is always the one thing that is lacking, and that people feel the biggest piece that's missing from their life. So for instance, if you can't communicate with the outside world, how can you effectively prepare to return? If you can't talk to your children, how do you parent? And yet parenting, and I know that's one of the questions that that I'm going to address a little bit later on, that you can be an effective parent, you can be a positive parent. But also from an advocacy perspective, if we change the narrative about who we incarcerate, why we incarcerate, how we incarcerate, and that we change the language that we use, then we can transform systems, we can transform communities, and that will lead to reductions in recidivism rates.
It seems to me, one quick follow-up question for you. It seems to me that some people have in mind that when people are incarcerated, they're somewhere else, they're off on their own. Maybe you get to go visit, you know, occasionally, but it's really like a totally different world. Are you breaking that down a little bit and saying that people who are incarcerated can be very much part of the world of people that care about them and they care about?
Absolutely. Because not only, and from an advocate perspective and from a person who does policy work, you know, we know what goes on behind the fence because we hear from the people that are incarcerated. We know what the families are going through when they're trying to maintain those connections with their loved ones. We know that there are so many great nonprofits and social service organizations that want to help people transition. And so we know what that communication need was. And so honestly, we have to remember too that 95% of the people that we incarcerate are coming back to our community. So what we do to, what we don't do for or with is what they're bringing back to our community. And no one should be thrown away, no one. And so if we change the language, and that also includes people like me who've been on the inside, how I refer to myself, how I tolerate people referring, and ending the use of words like inmate and convict and felon, those are all demeaning and dehumanizing words. And so if we take those out of our language, if we change and we talk about people who have been systems involved, people currently on probation, and we make it human first, then we're restoring dignity. And that too is a key to a reduction in recidivism.
Great, thank you. I want to bring Basha Skudrick into this conversation, if that's okay. And Basha is the placement coordinator from prison cells to PhD. And maybe you could explain a little bit about what that job entails and how you got involved in this, and also comment on this concept of using communication to reduce recidivism.
Thank you, Dr. Sharfstein, and thank you, Marcus, for sharing your story. I am a justice impacted person myself. I was charged with 3 counts of mail fraud in 2018 for misappropriating funds that totaled over $380,000 during my 8-year employment. I was sentenced to 30 months of imprisonment for a nonviolent crime at a federal camp, serving 12 months on the inside and completing the remaining under the CARES Act. I'm a single mother of 2 young girls, and I felt like I was hit by a large truck. I had no idea how to plan and prepare for my departure, and saying goodbye to my family and friends was very difficult. There were so many unknowns prior to my conviction, during and post. I had no idea what the future would look like. Communication was certainly important, but we were all trying to learn how to communicate during that time. Mentally, I was frozen. I knew my family was counting on me, and I had to learn how to move through this difficult journey together with them and to give them hope to also survive while I was away. I knew that there must be someone who has gone through this path and has come out a better person. So I started to do what Marcus did. I started Googling people who were leaders in incarceration. And that's how I came across Dr. Andres. I was fortunate to learn about him, his organization, and also another organization called Prisoness Ministry Movement. I also started volunteering for the Criminal Justice Ministry in St. Louis, and I knew there was no time to wait. Building a network and support system are so crucial in any situation, let alone one like this. So I wanted to find a healthy and proven network that would help me heal and learn from this experience. So when I started reading Dr. Andres's bio, I learned he was also from St. Louis, so I knew it was a perfect connection. He made the time to listen to me, and he welcomed me into an incredible professional network of people who are focused on restorative measures, not punitive, but most importantly, solutions. And the solution is to communicate.
And so tell me or tell us what you do as the placement coordinator.
So we have a cohort, we have seasons. So we have people who are returning into the community, who are learning to advance through education. So they go online, they apply to the P2P program, and we have a 2-month program that provides skill sets to returning citizens. We work on creating their CV. We work on talking about your narrative. We work on upskilling and reskilling, letting people know that they have the tools to bring that confidence back that is completely hampered when you're away. And again, having that network is so important, just to talk to people who have had those lived experiences and to work together to find opportunities to live again.
And that's such important work. And in the process of doing that, can you get a sense for how well people are connected to their support system? Does it make it easier for you to do the placement job if they have been in contact? If they've have ties? Can you tell the difference, I guess?
Absolutely. I have to say that I was probably not the norm in terms of my experience. I had an incredible support network of family and friends. I had, parents and children and friends, just like Marcus's mom, who would email me every single day. But that's not the typical case. Access to technology is very difficult. A 1-minute phone call costs 35 cents. To call anywhere in the United States. If you have family that are international, it's $1 a minute. If you don't have those funds to pay for those amenities, you don't have communication luckily I was blessed with those amenities. So I saw many women who kind of advanced in their trauma because they didn't have that connection to the outside world. And I also learned and heard about those stories by meeting the scholars that decided to advance in their skill sets with P2P. It was just nice for anyone with a lived experience to kind of connect on a human level.
Got it. I'm going to bring Kim back into the conversation, but this is really a question for both of you. This question of people who are incarcerated who are also parents, and how do they stay connected in communication with their kids in a positive way that is ultimately important both for them and for their kids. Maybe I'll start with you, Kim.
Okay. Again, I've always said that just because you go to prison doesn't mean you're a bad parent. And keeping those bonds of that parental involvement is critical. And I also want to, before I kind of answer that question, I also want to piggyback on something that Basha was just saying, that COVID really has taken communications and put it up on its end, because people who don't have the financial support from the outside to be able to pay for the phone calls or to be able to pay for stationery, they were really hurt by this pandemic because all jobs ceased. So no one's making any kind of money, and that's a whole subject for a different webinar about prison wage. But so people weren't able to make that communication. But I think that one of the best things that I ever saw was the ability for people to continue to parent. And it was something that we did here in Maryland, and it happened organically. And once somebody did it, it kind of just spread. I saw women who at count time, as soon as count cleared, they ran to that phone and they called their kids and asked about their day in school. I saw parents who would come back from dinner early so that they could read their children a bedtime story at night. They could help with their homework. And if there was a subject that somebody didn't know anything about, there were people lined up around that would help those kids with those homework. We wrote 2 books for one of my best friends for her kids, that we copied it, we sent it home, and she read those books every single night to her 2 children. So there are ways of continuing to parent. There are ways of maintaining contact with your children's school. You're not out of the picture just because you are incarcerated. You have a role, you have a right, you have a responsibility to continue to be in that that parental role. And we have to make sure that that's facilitated in making sure, as Margaret was saying, the Flikshop Angel program, how amazing is that for a kid to be able to send to his parent or her parent a postcard? How great is it that we can now legislatively work with legislators who are understanding the importance of parenting behind the bars and who are making these programs available and enforcing them. We're talking about putting technology behind the fence because COVID has taught us that that is a necessary thing. And to, again, keep those connections and those family relationships as strong as possible, given the distance, because visiting is stopped and not every one of our facilities is capable or has the capacity or the technology to do video visits. There are people that have not seen their family for almost a year now. That's unacceptable, and that plays out again in how they come home and what they come home to in terms of their family and their children.
Thank you. Basha, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I mean, as the world has experienced, COVID has become a major barrier to communication and access, whether you're incarcerated or not incarcerated. And I think as a world, we've been forced to pause and rethink how we used to live. The words Zoom, COVID have become an international word during this time with more restrictions. And just imagine not having your iPhone or your Android with you, or just having the opportunity to pick up your phone to call a loved one. I know in terms of my communication with my family, I had to calculate my 300 minutes that I had. So I had 10 minutes per day to share with my family.
That's 300 minutes a month.
A month. 300 minutes a month. Luckily, last March during COVID, they added 200 more minutes and the fees were waived. So that was a remarkable gift because our communication almost doubled. However, with 200 women in the same building, you only had 6 phone booths. So the waiting time was extremely long. And I mean, you just stood because you had no other option and you wanted that connection. So there were long lines and you did what was possible to hear that voice of your loved one on the other side of the phone.
I wonder for both of you, are there policy solutions to this issue of communication? Are there different technologies that should be permitted in these facilities? Are there different ways of maintaining security, but also allowing for this incredibly important connection, which is especially important when you think about recidivism? What do you think is on the horizon, and has the crisis of COVID led to new ideas, or innovations that people are trying?
I think so. And I'm glad that it has. It's, again, anything that involves correctional systems is, kind of like moving the Titanic in a canal. It takes some time, but legislators are starting
I think we all have a image of that these days.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
a big
that. Sorry,
tanker in the canal.
Little too soon. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Too soon. But again, a glacial pace. But again, we're now understanding the importance of technology. We're now understanding that there is a way of bringing technology into institutions so that communication can be facilitated, and not just communication with loved ones, but communication with educational programs, because that was severely disrupted. That came to a virtual stop. So people who were attending programs like P2P Behind the Fence or other correspondence programs, whether they were faith-based, that came to a screeching halt because mail stopped. There was no communication. There was no technology. And so there is now a increased effort to broaden technology access to correctional facilities across the country. And that's a good thing. But we also are starting to see and starting to make the demand that programs such as Marcus's with Flikshop, because I remember when I was incarcerated, I could get a 10-page letter from home and I held on to that. And I could get a card from home. And then slowly but surely that kept getting chipped away. You can't have that many pieces of paper in an envelope. You can't have a card. They have to be one-ply cards. Then it was no cards. Then it was postcards. And then even then they were trying to find ways to end that. And it's all punitive. And unfortunately, those punitive measures also impact, again, the communication in and out that has to be in place. And so legislators are taking a look at that. There's also an increased demand in quality parenting programs that also deal with community mediation, parent and child mediation, and so that we can start building this sort of seamless transition back to the community, because you can't just release somebody and they have to step right back into being a mom or a dad and have all of the 9,000 other things that they need to do in that first 30 days of coming home. So we have to do, and communication is the way to do it, to begin to facilitate the communication with the parties, the entities, the organizations, the individuals that someone is going to return home to. And we have a mandate to do that, because if we're serious about ending mass incarceration, if we're serious about cutting our recidivism rates, then at the heart of it is going to be what we do with expanding and increasing communication access.
It's about a lot more than just getting people a couple appointments when they're leaving, or an ID even, which is incredibly important, but it's a lot more than that. Pasha, anything you want to say before we move on to the next part of our program?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I think when we don't speak the same language or live in the same culture, it's difficult to understand each other's perspectives. So in order to change that narrative, we have to all work together, from the judicial team to the victims to the offenders, to kind of work together on best solutions. So I think what we can do for the future is to kind of have that team model to talk about these situations and to understand what those solutions are and what those decisions yield. I think incarceration is a tremendous controversial story. It was never part of my narrative in the past until I had this lived experience for my family, for my friends, for my community. But now that we've lived through it, we're more aware of the issue and the consequences associated with it. So sharing stories like this and having Johns Hopkins have a lecture series like this, I think is very important to helping improve the current state.
Great. I wonder whether we could bring Marcus Bullock back to the discussion for a couple of minutes if he's available. Let's see. There he is. What a great discussion. Marcus, I wanted to give you a chance to react to it a little bit before we move on in the program. Any additional...
One of the things that, I get really excited, I personally get really excited about these kinds of conversations, especially as we think about the needs for different levels of communication inside of these facilities. Thank you both, Basha and Kim, for highlighting so many topics from what it's like for some of the people who are like you and I, Basha, who do receive love from their loved ones, to those who are not typically not like us, who do not receive, who receive little to any support from their loved ones, all the way through. Kim, I love that you highlighted the importance and value of some of the other service providers and some of the other people that are in the community that also want to connect with people that are in these cells. One of the things I think that we miss out on a lot of these opportunities when we have these kinds of conversations is the need for family, love, and empathy and accountability, but also with the community, how the community can get involved and want to be able to help support people inside these cells well before they come home, right? I mean, there's a massive reentry community that wants to be able to support post-release, but during those times in the cells, you have programs like P2P who are very adamant about trying to figure out how to build onto the reentry path well before people come home. And I think that that's a big part of the conversation that I'd love to continue to highlight is the importance and value of our community banding together, getting involved in sending everything from educational directories all the way through other, HR resources, legal services, all of these things that we are missing out on from communications, trying to figure out how to overcome those. And I'm biased because I believe that scalable technology can be one of those methods that we can do it, and we can do it affordably. We don't have to prey on our families. We don't have to prey on the people in the community who can't afford these things. There's ways that we can do it. We figured out ways to do it in our community every day with some of the social technology that we use today. Now it's time to be able to reform what it looks like for these people in these cells.
Great. Well, thank you. I want to also echo your appreciation for Kim and Basha, who really had just, tremendous insight into these questions. There is one question here that has come up, which is, what about somebody who is interested in themselves, contributing? Is there something that literally anybody could do to help make a connection with people who are incarcerated? Maybe that question's for you, Marcus. I understand that there might be something you have in mind.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. I'm really excited about ways that we can engage today and let all of our community be able to band together to help us demonstrably tell people that are in these cells that they are cared for and they're loved. So many times we're sitting in our cells, and sitting in our rooms, in our homes, our offices, in our cars even, and we hear these kinds of awesome conversations, and we get the overwhelming feeling to want to contribute. And the question is, well, how do I do that? Well, today we have an awesome exercise that will allow for each one of us to be able to band together and show this amazing community that they are cared about. And we're doing this today with the Moment of Empathy mobile app that's powered by Flikshop and designed by our teams that allow for our community members to be able to send messages of love and support to people that are in these cells. Now, this activity is really, really simple, and I'm excited to be able to introduce it today. In the chat, you'll find the link to you'll find the link to how Moment of Empathy has been designed and how it's powered. That's at flikshop.com/moment of empathy. You can click on that link in the chat to be able to see exactly what we're doing there. But essentially, what we all can do today is jump into either your Apple app stores or your Google Play Store and search for the mobile app called Moment of Empathy. That app, where you can download that app, it's not the Flikshop app, it's the Moment of Empathy app. That app that you can download to your device right now, and then you'll be able to log in under the P2P account that allows us to be able to send postcards to people that we've already pre-identified that are associated directly with P2P that want to receive some kind of love and support from our community today. You can log into this app and then you'll be able to send a photo and a message to someone anonymously that will be delivered to their cells within the next 3 days. Now, we're going to place the login credentials to the Moment of Empathy app in the chat as well. So once you have jumped into your App Store or your Google Play Store and you've downloaded the Moment of Empathy mobile app, you can use the credentials inside of the chat, which is the username, is the email address, as well as the password that you can use to log into this app. Now, we've already have these Flikshop credits that have already been purchased by P2P that will allow you all to be able to send your own personalized photo. Maybe you'll have a photo of you standing in front of the statue of Michael Jordan in the arena and you want to be able to share that amazing photo. Or maybe there's a favorite vase that sits inside of your living room that has meaning that came from your grandparent and you want to be able to share the beauty of it just with someone that says, hey, listen, I just want to let you know that you're not forgotten. If you would love to be able to join us with this, please download the Moment of Empathy app from your app stores, log in with the credentials that are appearing in your chat, and band with us together to send hundreds of postcards to men and women that are sitting in these cells that will love to be able to hear your expressions of love and empathy this week. Thank you guys so much for partnering with us to be able to share in this real moment of empathy.
And I just did it, and it said that my Flikshop postcard will be received by somebody in Baltimore in 4 days. And just on a personal note, I have to tell you the importance of getting something like this. There's probably a lot of things worse than, but in the moment, there's nothing worse than hearing mail call and hearing everybody else's name called, but not yours. Or seeing your roommate get several letters and you get nothing, or coming back from work and finding no mail for you thrown into your cell. It is so depressing. It is a really hard emotion that you just have to kind of tamp down. This is a way of just brightening up someone's life. It's just one moment, one postcard that P2P was so proud to partner with Flikshop on, so that we can actually end that feeling for somebody one day. They're going to get this postcard and they don't know, it's just somebody who's saying, we care about you. We've picked 3 pictures. We have 3 great sayings that will go with it if you're struggling for words. If not, write your own. But again, this is a very concrete way of telling somebody who's incarcerated that they're not forgotten, they are cared about. And this message of empathy, this message of hope from someone who's been on the inside and saw what it's like to not get mail, who experienced days of not getting mail, this is priceless. So thank you, Marcus, for this amazing technology. And thank you, everybody. So log on now. It is easy to do, and it has such an incredibly powerful benefit. And everybody can do it. You've got your phone. You can do it right now.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for this. And I want to invite Dr. Stanley Andrees, who is the founder of P2P, to come on and reflect a little bit on what you've heard so far today and the whole series in a couple minutes before we start taking questions from the chat. I will tell you, though, the first question, Marcus, everyone has is, where can I get a Flikshop t-shirt? I just want you, that is the first question. So I'll leave you to think about the answer to that one while we turn to Dr. Andrees.
Thank you. I just want to open by first thanking Marcus, Basha, Kim, and Josh for an incredible discussion so far today. I am just incredibly overwhelmed with how this session has gone. So this was something, as I mentioned in the first lecture, a conversation that I started with some colleagues at Hopkins over a year ago that eventually connected me to Josh. And we had a conversation about how we need to be centering the voices of formerly and currently incarcerated people in the movement to really create change around helping people who've been through the system. And I was fortunate enough for Josh to really be excited about this idea and connect me to some others in the Hopkins School of Public Health. And this is what was created. I was linked to Lynn Rubenstein, and him and a few members of his team helped put this lecture series over the past several weeks or months together. So we have had over 750 people register to these 3 different lecture series, and we've had over 450 unique attendees over the course of the 3 different lecture series. So it's just been an incredible community that has been built. And I think, from the feedback, which we'll be dropping a feedback survey here in a second, the feedback has said they should be longer. They should be longer than an hour and 15 minutes. We need to have more of them. This conversation is so needed. So the feedback that we're getting is that everyone else feels that this has been a very valuable session that we've put forward. And I am just the speakers that we've had over the course of the several months are just superheroes. They're personal heroes of mine. I get to work with them. That's kind of cool because a lot of them have been part of the P2P team. And I just couldn't be more thankful for that. I also wanted to make a bit of a personal announcement as well. So I will be dropping in the chat a link to the pre-release of my book that will be being released this summer. And I encourage you, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about my personal journey and my thoughts on how we should be addressing the criminal legal system reform and the use of education as a tool to help end recidivism, the use of communication to help end recidivism, a little bit of my tie to that communication piece, just as Marcus and Basha had mentioned. I was very fortunate to have people connecting with me throughout my incarceration and have that type of support. I found out on my own that, studies now know that just communication alone helps reduce recidivism. No type of programming, no type of education, just staying connected to positive people will help reduce recidivism. So I certainly understand that and the power of that. And this has been, it's been a difficult journey moving towards releasing this book in terms of really sharing some personal aspects that I haven't really shared before. I do a number of different speaking engagements, but I certainly don't get into the level of detail that I've gotten into in this book. And that is because people on this call that are formerly incarcerated can tell you that there's certain parts of our journey that are just very painful and difficult to share, but are needed to really help inspire change in those that have been impacted and those that haven't. For this special release, those that are interested can get a discounted price by signing up today. Or if you'd like, you can pay the regular pre-sale price by using the link. But if you go through the booklet, you'll see that there is a link to a discounted price. And with that, I wanted to just, the session is not over. I wanted to drop in and offer my thanks to the speakers of today and all the speakers that we've had in the previous lectures before we end it. We will be moving into the Q&A session, but just again, thank you to all of our incredible speakers and panelists. Thank you to our Hopkins partners. Thank you to our sponsors that help make this possible. And of course, thank you to the 750 plus people that felt that this was important, and the many more that ended up watching the recorded version. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope you stay on, Dr. Andrews, for the Q&A. And I personally also want to thank Johns Hopkins, Lynn Rubenstein, as well as Gabe Eber, who were very involved in preparing for today. So I'm going to jump into some of the questions here in no particular order. This is an interesting comment saying formerly incarcerated community members are the best mentors for people currently incarcerated, but the system, at least in New York, this comment says, that prohibits contact between those people. I just got in trouble with my parole officer, the person says, for communicating with people still in prison. So if you could comment on this, is it true that people who are formerly incarcerated have trouble communicating with people who are in prison, and how do you see this fitting into the overall discussion we're having today? Anyone should feel free to unmute and jump in.
I'll just answer really quickly. It is true. It's very unfortunate. And what is fortunate in terms of P2P, and many of our partners find this surprising, we have a contract with the DOC that allows us to circumvent that, because the very aspect of our program, the crux of our program, is connecting formerly incarcerated people to formerly incarcerated people and currently incarcerated. So they've let us bypass that law, or that policy that is present in most DOCs across the country.
I guess that brings up a question that when P2P does this, there's confidence that it's going to be the positive interaction you're seeking. If you're opening up communication, do you need to be concerned about negative interactions, and how do you avoid those? What is there a concern there? Is that legitimate? Is that a question that comes up when you're talking to people about communication?
The way I think of it is, there's going to be, you're in leadership at Johns Hopkins. You can't expect that every one of your faculty is going to, there's going to be individuals that fall outside of the expected integrity that they're supposed to have as a faculty member. Do you really punish all 1,000 of your faculty for that one person who falls out of the integrity expectations? That's kind of how the prison system works. They expect that 1 out of 100, 200, 1,000 interactions will be this negative thing, and they punish everybody for that. That's just, that's not a model.
Totally point taken. I guess the question is, are there things that can be done to structure communication to make them more likely to be positive? Do you see what I mean? Like, should there, any thoughts you have on that, or is that not a helpful way to think about it? Marcus?
I'm going to say absolutely. I mean, thank you, Stanley. I was literally going to say the same exact thing. The reality of it is that, yes, emphatically, yes, you should even count on something happening the moment that you open it up, right? The same way that we think about counting on, we build vulnerability reports for every other technology that we build, because we assume that there's going to be some nefarious usage, some malicious person that wants to come in and try to, mistreat this kind of available technology. We assume it. I mean, every industry that there is. This is the one isolated one where we're like, hey, you know what? Nah, it's so easy to be able to throw away the entire baby with the bathwater, right, simply because we think that there's going to be something that's going to be the thing that's going to really change it all. And no one wants to be responsible for being the person that pushed the button and says, I opened it up. And I think that these kinds of conversations begin to shift that narrative, so that not only we're able to see what the possibilities are with these comms tools, but then we're also able to see what the possibilities are across the entire gamut of the industry and the space.
Yeah, really focusing on what the upside is, which is enormous.
Well, and I think too, like, for instance, P2P has a pen pal program, and we're very clear about the people that are either our pen pals on the inside or the pen pals on the outside, that there is a clearly stated and understood set of expectations and situations. And so again, we're always trying to make sure that both sides feel safe and that no boundaries are crossed. And so again, you can put things like that. There are codes of conduct for school programs and other programs that are inside, and you can do those. But again, like Marcus and Stan said, there's always going to be that one, I hate to say one bad apple, but there's that one bad actor that is going to do something, and the system's response is always shut it down for everybody. And, that's just wrong. And honestly, the first thing you started with, formerly incarcerated people are truly the best mentors. They are the best resources for people, because we know what someone's going through. We know what they've been through. We know what lies ahead of them. We are the best people to help somebody navigate reentry or navigate a situation that's happening to them behind the fence. And so I know that there are states, Maryland used to be, but now we just don't enforce it, where if you were on parole or probation, you could not have any contact with anybody else that was on parole or probation. Well, that's impossible to do. And yet there are agents out there that still mandate that. I know that when I first came home, from an advocacy perspective, I had to get special permission in order for me to continue to advocate for people that were incarcerated, because I was currently incarcerated. I mean, I had been formerly incarcerated.
So let's say people are listening to this and are excited to make a change in their state. And that requires, as a number of the questions talk about, you know, activism, reform, getting new laws passed. What are the ways that people can help? And in particular, I'm interested in the success that you've had, or the challenges that you've faced in bringing the voices of people who are incarcerated to those discussions, which obviously have enormous impact for them.
Well, I will be honest, the voice of those with the lived experience should be driving the conversation. We should be leading the narrative. I have the distinction of being the only formerly incarcerated woman in Maryland who has written policy that's gotten passed into law 3 times. That's what it takes. I know how policy is interpreted behind the fence. I also know how to write policy, and I know what is good policy. But I'm not unique. There are organizations that are working on drafting policy that puts the voice of those with a lived experience at the head of the table. And we are the experts. Our friend, we all know Glenn Martin. We love our brother to pieces. Those of us that are closest to the problem are also the closest to the solution, and yet the furthest from the resources. And we're slowly chipping at that. But we're now creating the tables. We're creating the conversations. And we're the ones that are driving and reshaping the new narratives.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to comment on that? How can people who, are there organizations that are really in the lead in addition to P2P that are doing this kind of advocacy that people may want to support?
Each city has their own advocacy group. So it's just,
Right.
learning who those partners are. That's certainly what I did even before my incarceration. I wanted to touch and get close to the culture that I was entering in. So criminal justice ministry in St. Louis was the place that I started doing volunteer work for. On a national level, the Prisoness ministry movement is another wonderful organization. It's a safe space where you can talk about stigma and all the emotions that Dr. Andres alluded to and that he shared in his book. There are just so many emotions and variables that people don't understand because they haven't gone through it. I recently read a quote by Adam Grant in the Harvard Business Review, and he said, in a turbulent world, success depends not just on cognitive horsepower, but also on cognitive flexibility. And I think that's the direction we really need to go towards.
Got it. Now, thank you, is there a model communications policy somewhere, or a state that's a model that people, if they were interested in getting into this issue or understanding how their state's doing, is there something that says, like, here are the 10 things that a correctional system in a state should do to permit the kind of communication that we've been talking about today? Does something like that exist, or would you point to a particular place that has gotten it about as right as anyone?
I would refer to our partner organization or coalition, Unlock Higher Education, and particularly Dr. Noel Vess, who is a formerly incarcerated scholar at Stanford Medicine, and he's from the state of Washington. I say all that to say he will know that answer. But what I do recall is that the state of Washington, under the guidance of another formerly incarcerated leader, Tara Simmons, whose journey brought her to being beating a decision to not allow her to be a lawyer. So she, a lawyer and state lawmaker in Washington, who has introduced bills around communication for those who are incarcerated. Maybe by the end of the call today, we might be able to get that information.
Great. And I think people who have registered for these talks, it would be possible to email them, and follow up in case people are interested in being more involved. Oh, I'm going to cut to Marcus for the question about your t-shirt. Are those available somewhere?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that. So I'm post that inside of our chat here. I'm super pumped so that you guys can will be able to order the shirts and rock them on your next calls, and also selfies and tag us in IG.
Okay.
We still have a few more minutes left.
Yes.
Please send the postcards. If you haven't done it yet, log in, download the app, log in with the information that's in the chat, and make someone's day. Let somebody know that they are genuinely cared about. It takes not even 30 seconds.
Thank you. And here's another question. It has to do with tablets and the idea of having sort of special tablets that could be used within correctional facilities. And is that happening in different places? How do you think about that?
So I can speak to that a little bit. So most places don't have it at the moment, but more and more institutions and DOCs are moving in that direction, and especially since COVID. The usefulness to the institution has been brought up. Unfortunately, it's kind of gone to the far end of the scale, where some DOCs are looking at implementing tablet technologies and removing in-person visitation under the guise of safety, and that people could connect just through video. Maryland, where P2P is one of the places we're at, only has tablets for education. Many places have implemented it for education first, and then they're moving towards just communication in general. But there are a lot of bad players. Most, as was alluded to here a couple of times, some of the leaders in that, companies like JPay, Securus, GTL, they are charging exorbitant prices for these technologies. So as Marcus mentioned, this is a business model for innovators like Marcus and others to move into this space. One company is called Nucleos that I'm familiar with, that is looking at bringing affordable, rightly priced technologies into incarceration settings. There's also a couple of formerly incarcerated individuals that are moving in that direction.
Great. One last question. We've talked a lot about how important communication is for people who are incarcerated and for their transition. But maybe you could talk about the importance of communication to the other side of that communication, people who are, the support system on the outside, who otherwise might be totally cut off from somebody that they care about, but now are able to be in touch with them. What is it like for them? Is it hard for them to do it? Are they, do they bring sort of the baggage of whatever happened to it? How do you get people engaged, and what ultimately does it mean for them to have that kind of ongoing communication for them? I'm sure Marcus, the story you told about your mother was so moving. I'm sure it wasn't just for you that she did that she must have gotten an enormous amount out of it, feeling connected to you. I just wonder how you all think about the overall relationship, not just the one side.
Well, I believe incarceration doesn't just stop with me as the individual. It bleeds into your family, into your friends, into your community. And when you're removed from that system, they have to live somehow, financially, mentally, physically. So, that's how I got involved with P2P because I was trying to find that resource and that support system for my family. Unfortunately, there isn't anything like that to help people on the outside navigate as much as we are on the inside.
There are, like I know in Maryland, there's several family groups. One of them in particular that has been in existence for a while. They deal with generally men who've been incarcerated for multiple decades, and it's a support group for them. The problem that trying to get people together, unless there's something like within a prison ministry at somebody's church or their faith institution, you have to deal with the stigma. While in some communities, incarceration has become normalized, it's still a stigmatizing kind of thing. And to admit that you have a family member that's incarcerated opens yourself up to having to look at a lot of those things that you don't want to address or you want to admit to. So finding that support is very difficult, but it is critical. I know that in Maryland, there is a piece of legislation that unfortunately didn't move that would offer the opportunity for mediation, not offender and victim mediation, but family mediation. So somebody's coming home, to have the opportunity to rebuild a relationship with their loved one, their children, their parent, their spouse, their whatever. But again, that's a voluntary thing. It is one of those things in the restorative justice movement is gaining traction to bring people back together to address and hold accountable for the roles that people played in the situation, but also to try to bridge and heal the harm and the damage. And when that happens, not only is the individual set up to be successful when they come home, but the community and the family are set up to be successful when they come home.
So interesting. Marcus, what does Flikshop do for the person who is sending the postcard?
We work to ensure that we do a couple of things. One, we want to help destigmatize their loved one that's in the cell, right? We want to help change the narrative and outlook of how they perceive that person, and help to be able to give them the tools they need to be able to articulate what the needs are for their loved one, right? There's a big ball of typically shame that's baked into it, right? No one walks around with their t-shirt on that says my brother is in jail, right? And most times we try to hide from that, right? So we want to leverage these amazing people on this call today to be able to talk about why it's important to have this kind of conversation. And then allows for the family member to just come out of the shadows and say, hey, I do have a brother that's in jail. And it's not, this is something that happens to a ton of people. How am I able to best support that person that's coming home? I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do, to be able to shift the conversation. I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that my mom would tell you is that when I first went to jail, there's the muscle memory that she had simply with cooking food. She would cook a big pot of chili for dinner and set the table for the two of us at dinner before she would even realize that I was still in the cell and I wouldn't be home for dinner. That happened for months while she was there. How she did the laundry, how she prepared the home, how she paid the bill, the things that she paid for education. It was like, do I continue to pay for this thing, for Marcus' things at high school? Do I pay for pictures? What do I do with these things, right? How do I emote with that? The challenge of going to work and being able to talk about that with their family members. So what we do, one of the things that we do at Flikshop, again, try to destigmatize, but we also try to leverage our news channels and our blog feeds to be able to help educate the family members and spotlight other families and how they make it through it successfully. We talk about it on our social media channels and try to say, hey, listen, let's normalize people coming home from jail and being successful. Let's not, we don't have to hide behind this mask and say that maybe you can be this unicorn. No, Marcus ain't no unicorn. I'm not an anomaly. I just had access, social capital, and resources. Right? So how do we help provide people with the same opportunities when we come home? And we'll see a demonstrable difference when we start preparing for people well before they come home from prison.
Great, fantastic. So important for everybody involved. Dr. Andres, the last word is yours.
Just thank you to the panelists, to you, Josh, for really being the spark that made this happen. I can't say that enough. And to all the previous panelists, I want to drop the word that some of the questions went unanswered. We are going to social media to answer those questions and you can follow Prison to Professionals at Prison to Pro, Prison the number 2 Pro on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And we'll be answering some of those unanswered questions there. Additionally, the Hopkins School of Public Health has these videos up So there was a couple of questions about women in the chat. There was a couple of questions about racial equity. Some of those topics were addressed in previous lectures. So I encourage you to watch those if you haven't, and we'll be sending all those resources out. I encourage you to check out the booklet that has a lot of the resources in it as well. And just thank you to our panelists again, and thank you to all that have joined us over the past couple of months. So thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all.
Thank you.